This is Shockwave News Live. You can find me online at shockwavenews.com, twitter.com/Shockwave News 1, and of course, Spreaker.com/Shockwave News. And on YouTube, of course, my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Shockwave News Live. And right here, last but not least, Spreaker.com/Shockwave News. Okay, like, share, subscribe if you like this podcast. Okay, this is going to be, let's get into the news here. This is news report is care of WND. That's WND.com. That's where I'm pulling this news article from today, June 17th, 2020. So this is today's article. The headline reads, UN, that's United Nations, official demands reparations for people of African descent everywhere. They want reparations for African Americans' descent. So if you're African American and you descended anywhere here on the planet, they want reparations for you. Well, that's interesting. Let me get into the article a little bit. This is by the Daily Caller. I guess they're interviewing this gentleman here. Daily Caller News Foundation. The UN Human Rights Chief came out in support of reparations for all people of African American descent globally in a statement released Wednesday. The statement from the UN High Commissioner, Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, was released in response to the death of George Floyd, who died in Minneapolis in police custody on May 25th after an officer kneeled on his neck. Behind the racial violence, systematic racism and discriminatory policing lies failure to acknowledge failure to acknowledge and confront the legacy of the slave trade and colonialization. Bachelet said, "We need to make amends for centuries of violence and discrimination, including formal apologies, truth-telling process, and reparations in various forms." Okay, very interesting. Bachelet also called out racial discrimination in many countries across the globe. She said racism harms millions of people of African descent around the world. She specifically said of African descent suffer short-term and long-term harm as well as lethal harm. Healthcare, education, job promotions, housing, voting, incarceration are a few specific areas where racial discrimination is prevalent, according to Bachelet. Systematic racial discrimination extends well beyond any expression of an individual's hatred. It results in bias in multiple systems and institutions of public policy, which separately and together perpetrate and reinforce barriers to equality, Bachelet said. Bachelet stopped short of putting forth a concrete reparations proposal. However, she said time is in the essence in putting forth measures to combat racial discrimination. Meanwhile, Floyd, this is George Floyd that was murdered, killed. Meanwhile, Floyd's brother addressed the UN Wednesday, begging the organization to investigate the killing of black people by police in the United States. According to the BBC, he asked the UN set up an independent commission that would investigate police killings of black people. Bachelet was appointed Human Rights Chief in 2018. She served 2 terms, President of Chile. She's a member of the Socialist Party of Chile. Very, very, very interesting. Let me just say something about this issue here. A lot's already been said, but let me just chime in with my 2 cents, if I may. Reparations for black people. My first question is, I wasn't alive 75. I wasn't alive 100 years ago. I wasn't alive when slavery in this country that's been going on for years and years and years until Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. And the South, the southern states, of course, still wanted slavery. So I'll let you figure out what the southern states are for those people out there that don't know what a southern state is. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Okay, the point I'm getting to is just because that happened 100 years ago, are there things still happening today? Absolutely. But why should myself and why should other people of different color other than black have to pay reparations? We have to pay back to the African American people. We didn't do reparations. We didn't do any slavery. I've not had a slave. I've not owned a slave. I don't want a slave. I'm totally against that. Totally, 100%. Don't even want to see anybody that even supports that. I just don't even want to be around people. People like that are scum. Why would I have to pay reparations if I never had any slaves? Why should I be penalized just because my skin color, let's say in this example, my skin color is white? Why should I have to pay reparations what happened 100, 200 years ago? And the answer is we shouldn't. This all goes back to a feel-good, let's try to appease the black people. And this is happening right now. A lot of people don't know this. This is happening right now because the election's coming up, and they'll do anything to put Sleepy Joe Biden in there for president. They'll do anything. I mean, anything. They'll continue with the riots. They'll just on and on and on. It just gets crazy. People will say, "Oh, there you go. You're a conspiracy theory. You're this. You're that." No, I'm not. The Antifa and the BLM, Black Lives Matter, again, as I said in my last podcast, are being funded by George Soros behind the scenes. This issue is come up in order to try to remove President Donald Trump. Now, somebody would say, well, where does the racism fit in? Well, it's convenient that it comes up in George Floyd, and I don't say anything. My sympathies and condolences to the Floyd family, first of all. Second of all, it's just convenient. They're making this out to be something and going crazy about something that's been happening for a while. Should racism end? Yes, there's still racism, some of it left here in the United States. Absolutely. Should it be addressed? Absolutely, right now, not later now. Rioting and destroying the country is not going to help. The Democratic Party endorses Black Lives Matter and endorses Antifa. And because they endorse these two organizations who President Trump is now declaring as terrorist organizations, which should be, you have arson and destruction of property and different things like that, you need to be thrown in jail. You need to be behind bars. You need to be in prison. What happens is this is convenient to bring up the race issue now. And I'm just going to say this. This is going to get me a lot of hate mail, but I don't care. It is because it's an election cycle. It's an election year. If this weren't an election year, they could give a rat's rear end right now. The Democratic Party wouldn't give a crap. Wouldn't give a crap about the black vote. They don't give a crap about the African American community. They never did. They only use the African community conveniently, and they play them like a fiddle, knowing that they're emotionally charged and knowing that all they have to do is just see one killing, and they publicize that, and they put that all over the news. They push a button and go, bingo, here we are. riots in all the cities and different things like that, or all the major cities, people rioting, people protesting, and on and on and on. It's right on cue. It's staged. It's organized. I'm not saying that the Floyd murder was organized. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the rest of this crap going on is staged and it's organized, okay? Again, George Soros, behind the scenes, is funding all of this crap. The racism here in America is still well and alive. And should it be addressed? Absolutely. But there's a civil way and there's a legal way to address it. And one of the issues is you pass a bill, you go to your congressman, and the congressman takes that bill up, and then they go to take that bill to the House. They vote on the bill in the House, for those of you that don't know how a bill is actually passed in Congress. And what happens is once they take the bill up, and if a majority votes in the House, then they pass the bill on to the Senate. The Senate will ratify the bill, and then once the bill is ratified, they'll take it to a committee. It'll be ratified and worked out. The Senate, 100 senators in the Senate, they'll go ahead and vote on it, and if they have a majority of vote, they'll pass the bill on to the president. The president will then have the option of signing the bill into law or else vetoing the bill. Should he veto the bill would go back to the Senate, and then the Senate, if they have over 2/3 vote, they could override the president's veto. That's how that kind of works. So just in long and short, just an FYI there, that's what they need to do. They need to do something legally. If there is cases, which there is all over the United States, take this up in a court of law. Don't take this up and destroy everybody's property. You're hurting your own black people. You're hurting your own African American community. I've seen countless and countless and countless of YouTube videos of blacks destroying blacks' property, and poor black shop owners out there screaming and wanting to know why the hell they did this and why the hell they did that, and why did you tear up their store and trash their store and their community, and on and on and on. This isn't the way we get things done. These are a bunch of spoiled young adults out there, probably living still in mommy and daddy's basement, either 18 to 21 or 25, maybe 30 years old, a majority of these people up to that, and they're spoiled, and they might be going to college and still living at home, so mommy and daddy are paying all the bills, and they're out there rioting and causing all kinds of problems and stirring up all kinds of problems and issues. They're very spoiled. And how you handle a spoiled brat is you handle a spoiled brat with stern discipline. This is against the law. You broke the law. You're going to have to pay the crime. Well, what is the crime? Well, you might go to prison for 5 years or 10 years. Depends on the situation. If you're an arsonist and looter, stealing, then it might be longer. You know, what is the price of racism? Well, there should not be a price of racism. Racism shouldn't exist, but it does. It does all over. It does globally all over the world. What they do, I've examined, I'll give you an example, how they handle race over there in the UK. What I've seen, and maybe Australia and other countries, is they just deal with it. The African Americans, the true African Americans that settle in these other countries, and different things like that, they just deal with the circumstance. In other words, if racism pops up, they'll report it, and they deal with it in their own certain way according to their country laws, and they don't have to publicize every case. Only over here in the United States do you see globally, do you see any type of race issues or anything when it's on cue, and only when it's needed. Again, everything is needed right now. It's election cycle. Then, i.e., George Floyd happens to take center stage, unfortunately. He had to die, unfortunately, so this would create the whole entire chaos, because this was pre-planned again. Poor Mr. Floyd had to sacrifice his life in order for a bigger cause. And a lot of people will yell and scream at me, but again, I don't care. My condolences to the Floyd family. This was all a setup in order to create the racism, in order to create all of this chaos to get Donald Trump out of office. And that's what it all is. And again, my solution to the racism is don't do it. Just don't do it. And I'm just going to say this. All lives matter under God. If you don't believe in God and you believe in Allah or you believe in Buddha or whoever you believe in, then that's your prerogative. I can respect that, no problem. But for us people out here that are Christian and believe in God, we're all God's children. All lives matter. Okay? All lives matter. We're all a creation under God. And that's the most important point. And that's where we have to start. We have to start in the home. We have to start in the home, in the school, in the home. And we have to become closer and get closer to God. Again, if you're a non-Christian, a non-believer, well, then that's your prerogative. I respect that. But that would help, number one, by a little more faith and having faith and believing in God. Okay? And as legal issues pop up, you have to take that to the courts. You have to take these racism issues to the court. You have to take issues when there are problems up in litigation, of course. But again, rioting, tearing up the entire United States is not going to solve your damn issues. I can tell you that right now. The only thing it's going to do is it's going to piss a lot of people off that are patriots, and a lot of these stupid Antifa, these young kids 18 to 30 years old, these BLM, Black Lives Matter people. I'm telling you right now, if you come to a lot of these towns that have a lot of patriots, a lot of veterans, a lot of well-armed folks, I wouldn't do that if I were you, because you're gonna come there walking, and you're probably gonna go out in a stretcher, maybe a body bag, because they're not gonna take that too kindly. You tearing up their home, you tearing up their business, you tearing up their establishment, because they will shoot you, and they will shoot you on sight if you do that. You try to burn up, you try destruction of property, burning things down, spray painting, vandalism, looting, stealing, arson, all of that. So again, there's a time and place for everything, and the time and the place is now, and you must fight these obvious racism issues. You must try to fight them in the court, and then if the lower court doesn't work, you go to the 9th District Court, the second highest court in the United States. If that doesn't work, you take the issue to the Supreme Court. I'm telling you, if you have some good lawyers, then that's what you need to do to start ending racism. Again, racism is not in the streets, even though I know a lot of it exists, but you must fight it. Fight it legally. Don't fight it by destruction of property. The only thing that's going to happen is that's going to get you eventually in prison, shot or killed, or shot and killed. That's what the end result's going to be. One or two, either prison or shot and killed. That's what the end result would be if you continue down this path. And I speak out to the people, the folks that believe in BLM and are protesting and destruction property. I'm not talking about the peaceful ones, and Antifa as well. Peaceful protesters, that's your right to protest. I understand that. That's no problem at all. But the people, again, that commit the arson and the crime, you guys need to go to jail for a long time. Okay, this is Shockwave News reporting. Take care of yourself. Be safe. Like, share, subscribe. Have a good one. I'm out of here.